Welcome everyone to Patchworked. I'm your host Lisbeth Palmer, and I'm here with my friends Anna May from Away with the Maze.
Hey guys.
And other things. I don't know how to start a podcast yet. Tell me a little bit about just like the quick version of you and some of the things you're into right now.
I am a 30-something South Carolinian / social worker. I have a bachelor's and master's in social work, and while I don't think myself a social worker in the traditional sense, I think that social work is very much part of what I do, working at a university with undergraduate social work students as their academic advisor, helping to plan education abroad experiences for them, and making content on the side. After I finished college, I wasn't sure what to do with my life. I got my master's in social work, was staring down the barrel of a career as a therapist, and got the coldest feet known to man. Booked a one-way ticket to Japan, and then figured my shit out there. In Japan, I managed to live in the same city as my dear friend Lisbeth from college. Well, I know, small world, right?
It's crazy how that works.
I know. And even though we weren't incredibly close at the time, we were, college level friends. We became very close after living in Japan together for a couple of years. Nowadays, we're all back in the States doing our thing. My husband and I are travel content creators. You can find us at Away with the Maze. We're mostly on YouTube, but we're also on Instagram and basically any other places that you can find short and long form content. But our goal is to create and share sustainable, accessible travel opportunities. We still need to make money, and we utilize credit card points to do budget travel to see new things and cool places.
I think that's one of the most fun aspects of where you are currently, where you've ended up. You have so many different types of cool experiences, and you're now using those experiences to make travel more accessible for other people. And I think that's wonderful, because I think people often are they see travel and even things like home renovation or country living, which are other parts of your life that we can get into as being I don't know, these are all things that seem like they don't fit together necessarily, but you're making it happen.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's hard. I like to think that my story is not incredibly unique, and that's why it's important. I live in a tiny house in the woods on a couple of acres, and we spend a lot of time doing everything ourselves, fixing everything that we can by ourselves before we call in extra help, saving all of our money to do our own work, doing all the research to do our own work. And it's hard and it sucks in a lot of respects to have to do your own work, because it really ends up taking up all of your spare time, but it's so valuable to find the most affordable way to do things and the most approachable way to do things. And we extend that into the way we travel and the way we live all around. What's the most affordable, accessible way to do any of these things? And that's why I think I'm like everybody else. And I think if I'm able to find a way to travel more affordably as a state employee, or fix my house more affordably as someone who's balling on a budget, then I'd like to share that with everybody. Everyone should know about this.
Yeah. It's not it's not a glamorous lifestyle. And I mean that in the best way possible. People who post travel videos and stuff often feel so glamorous and shiny and untouchable and inaccessible. And that makes me really sad, because everybody deserves to have those opportunities. And I
completely agree.
Yeah, you're exemplifying a life where you can, I'm not going to say you can have it all, because I don't think anybody can really have it all these days unless they have $1 million or more. but but you are choosing to live a certain way so that you can have other really cool choices. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, why did you decide to do that?
Well, I managing money isn't necessarily easy, right? It's not easy for any of us. Um,
No, no, it's not.
it can be rough stuff. And I wouldn't call it simple either. Easy and simple are very different things. I wouldn't say it's necessarily simple, but I have found for myself a simple kind of formula in the direct correlation of what I'm not spending on everyday pleasures. I'm not going out to get coffee. I'm not doing a lot of different things. It's not to say I'm not living. I'm occasionally doing things as I see it's appropriate, but if I'm not incorporating those things into everyday life, I notice a sort of a one-to-one shift of like every dollar I'm not spending supporting a daily lifestyle, I am able to support an exciting vacation to some other place, which, you know, I would credit that a lot to knowing how to use credit cards and credit card points and loyalty programs pretty effectively. This is something James got me into early on into our relationship, and I've been a believer ever since. But using things like credit cards to support your everyday expenses, no matter how vast they may be, ends up accumulating this magic bank of points that we can also extend in sort of budgetary sense. But going to the new and exciting restaurant in town has never really been super enticing for me. I love to support the small businesses, but that's just not always where my excitement is and my attention is. And so every dollar I'm not spending over here, I'm able to spend at a coffee shop in Tokyo, or I'm able to spend on a hot air balloon in Mexico. And I think that's just something that motivates me very deeply.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important for people to have access to travel?
Oh my gosh, I think it makes us who we are in a lot of different ways. I think as Americans, we could really stand to step outside of what we're used to
Yeah.
and see new places.
Yeah.
I thought I knew who I was, and I thought I knew my place in these many layers that make up the world before I traveled, and boy, was I 100% wrong. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
I think one of our best teachers can be discomfort and difference. So putting ourselves in a situation in which we are experiencing linguistic differences and social difference, where we are no longer the majority, where we're experiencing the unknown, it challenges us in these really deep interpersonal ways. And helps to formulate our curiosity and our patience and our ability to relate to people with when there's a language barrier, our ability to try and enjoy new things all around, and really our ability to motivate ourselves to make that choice, because I think we encounter that crossroads and we can choose to sort of withdraw and not experience those differences. But I think we have to choose to keep showing up to push ourselves to continue to experience that.
Yeah. Travel feels so prohibitive in a lot of ways just because of how expensive it ends up being and all of that. And so it's a really easy thing for people to say, I'm not gonna invest in that. And they do miss out on a lot of those things. Although I guess I guess there's ways we can have those experiences within our own cities and communities,
Yeah.
but you have to like really be willing to make yourself uncomfortable. Nobody
so.
likes that. I don't
No,
like that.
it stinks.
It really stinks. I was thinking about it the other day with like resilience being a muscle where you have to, and discomfort is the same thing. You have to practice being uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that.
No, I hate it. But it brings me so much. Like, it has so much value, and that's the brand of discomfort I choose to continue to pursue. I was going to ask you.
Oh,
Should I be asking
you
you?
can ask me questions. This could be a
Whoa.
two-way street.
Well,
It's a
likewise. I mean, how have you experienced the challenge of discomfort lately?
no, not
Mm.
well at all. It sits terribly in my body. I'm really into the Enneagram. I'm sure we've talked about it at some point. But as an Enneagram 3, I really like having my shit together. And I like for people to think that I have my shit together. So what makes me really uncomfortable is sitting and looking at my shit not being together. And then I'm like, oh, this is not this is not what I thought. Because not only am I good at portraying to other people a certain view of myself, I'm very good at portraying that to myself. So I get very uncomfortable when I'm forced to see parts of myself that don't fit in with this view of myself.
Mm.
So like an example is in therapy, my therapist has been encouraging me to learn more about internal family systems. There's a book she recommended called No Bad Parts, and it is it's like a layman's guide to internal family systems. And as a not extracurricular, as a companion to that, like in our last session, she was like, "So, what do we think some of the shadows are that might be in your own life?" And I was like, I mean, I know that there's stuff about myself that's not great, but suddenly my brain just went completely blank. I was like, I mean, I guess I'm just and I found like with everything that I tried to tell her, like, oh, this is something that's maybe a negative. I was like, but here's how I'm trying to work on it already. Or and she's like, why do you think it's important for you to tell me that? Like, why do you think you need for me to know that you're working on those things? And I was like, I don't know. So that's an ongoing conversation that I have to keep doing. I have to do some homework with myself of like journaling and like being
Ooh.
uncomfortable because I hate it. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my current discomfort is
Oof. That's important.
looking at myself and being honest about it.
Mm.
And yeah, and it's not even like I want to be dishonest about it, but like my brain is literally like, bloop,
Yeah.
let's go somewhere else. Doesn't want to look straight on. So I have to trick myself into figuring out what the rough parts are. And that's a lot of work too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, I wonder what is driving this need to qualify these maybe more negative features about yourself with something that something that you're eliminating. Like, oh, I have this character flaw, but don't worry, I'm working on it.
Right. It's because want I want her to know that I know I'm flawed, but I'm also the kind of person that's going to work on those flaws, whatever those flaws might be. Like that, the person who knows that they're flawed and who's working on their flaws is a different kind of person than a person who knows they're flawed and just is like, well, whatever. In my brain. And I don't necessarily think that one of them is worse than I mean, obviously, subconsciously, I think one of them is worse than the other because I'm trying to only be one of those people. But I don't.
Ooh.
I actually don't. I mean, I think people can do whatever they want with their flaws, but for me personally, I have to work on them. Otherwise, who am I?
You want everyone to know that you're somebody who's always trying to grow.
I'm always trying to grow. Yes,
Always be
it's
growing.
important. That's important. I want people to know that I'm always trying to grow, always trying to be better than my current version. Because what if my current version isn't good enough, but it's okay because I'm still trying to grow and be better. So that's, yes. That's, yeah, it's fun. Brains are fun.
Brains are fun. Aren't they so great?
Wow. I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Crushed it. Good. Let's stay here a minute.
Let's be uncomfortable together. Maybe I can add that as one of my, I have a few questions that I want to be kind of regular questions for everyone. Maybe I can make, how have you been uncomfortable lately?
Yeah.
One of those questions. One of them is, what's something you unlearned recently?
I like it. Okay. What is something I've unlearned recently? After several years in the same type of professional position at my 9-to-5, I have unlearned and let go of a chronic need to be present when I'm not being paid to be present. And that is something that excites me. For so many years, it was kind of expected that we were online and accessible, even in the weekend and evening hours. Oh, did you get my email last night? Well, you sent it at 11:30, so I really shouldn't have. But you know what I did? Because that's the first thing I did when I got up this morning, was I checked my email, and I had no business doing that. So after so many years of doing the most, I am not trying to do the least necessarily, but just trying to do what I need to be doing. And it's been a very cool and arduous journey. I've been really excited about the growth, but unlearning a need to always be needed, I guess, has been important.
Do you think that is something that you have felt like as a particular struggle to you, or it's more like the culture of your office or like American corporate systems?
Yes, and I think it's a me problem. I think there's something. I think I definitely get a lot of satisfaction from being needed. I think a lot of us do.
Yes.
And that's not something we're all always ready to admit. But I do also think that comes down to it's definitely my previous work environment, and that was my longest running job before this one.
Yeah.
But that's American work culture. Is you don't clock out. You stay in contact with everybody on your personal phone, on your personal device.
Yeah.
Always be reachable. Never clock out.
Yeah.
You put your out of office message up and bypass it immediately so that you can cut down on the work you have waiting for you when you get back by checking your emails.
Yes. Ooh.
Yeah, that's a journey.
It's an American problem. It's an American corporate work problem. And there are people who are not falling prey to it, but they have to actively, or maybe women in particular. I don't know. Do men have a hard? Well, I think men also have trouble with these boundaries. But I think for anybody who doesn't want to be part of the system, I'm not going to be part of your system. That's
yeah.
What was I going to say? If you don't want to be part of the system, you have to actively work to be the kind of person who's not going to check your email after work. And that's really hard. Like, that's not something that people in other, well, I guess Japan was not a good example of that. I'm trying to think of other countries that I've heard of that where people have like better work-life balances, or maybe the American can do work all the time ethic is kind of going into all of these other spaces.
Can we have a more European work ethic where we get several weeks off in the summer, or a Swedish work ethic where we fika in the middle of the day and enjoy coffee?
That sounds lovely.
I do love a fika.
A fika. What a good word for that. Fika.
Fika with me sometime.
Fika. Let's fika together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have that here. Like we like it's totally accessible to us. Like I think it's now more and more normalized to have that kind of life, but you have to fight for it. And you have to know it's a possibility, and you have to like be willing to say I'm not going to take it anymore. And all of that is like hard work on top of all the other hard work that we're already
Oh
doing.
yeah.
That sucks. That's uncomfortable.
And and at what point, yes, that's uncomfortable. And at what point does standing up for that yearning for balance prevent you from advancement, prevent you from reaching the financial goals you may have for yourself? Does challenging the discomfort on the front end mean sacrificing discomfort down the line because you're eventually not going to make as much money if you're not offered as many promotions from that person down the hall who's constantly doing the most and is
Right.
constantly productive even in the off hours?
Right.
I don't know. I think this is the cycle of capitalism, I guess.
It's
Woof.
terrible. It's terrible. I think for me as well, like what immediately I start to think of, because I'm always thinking about people's perception of me, is like, if I'm not, if my coworkers are not perceiving, I mean, if I, if I worked with other people, like if I am not being perceived to work as hard as this other person, are they going to resent me for that, or are they going to have feelings about that? That would be my concern. But I don't have coworkers, so I don't even know why I would think that.
You don't.
Oh no. I guess translating to my life, the way I always am thinking about it is like, if I don't see this client's email, or if I'm not being perceived to work as hard as I think I should be in order for this project to be successful, even though like it's not like the final product is going to be the same whether they perceive me to be working hard or perceive me to be working not hard. Like that, those things are not actually correlated. So it's more about like, I want them to think that I'm working really hard so that they think they're getting their money's worth out of me, which is a terrible way to approach any kind of creative business. We are humans. We are not money.
Whoa.
Whoa. The status quo makes me wildly uncomfortable.
The rat race and all that.
Yeah, it's the worst.
The
It's
hustle.
worst. The hustle makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that people feel like they have to, well, but in a lot of cases people do have to hustle in order to like what is minimum wage? Like that's stupid.
Woefully inadequate is what it is.
So inadequate. I've been thinking recently, like, if I needed to like supplement my income as a videographer, there's no like part-time job where I could go and it would even be worth doing that. There's just no like, I'd have to work full-time at Target for $20 an hour to make working at Target worth it. And that really gets my goat.
Take that.
It really pisses me off.
Well, to bring it back around, I think that's kind of why my husband and I spend so much time not paying people to do things. Because we have little money. We could get a second job. We could get, we could work more at an hourly wage somewhere else so that we could pay someone to, build us a deck or do whatever that project is we're doing. Or we could save our money and we could do it ourselves. And I wouldn't have to spend morning, noon, and night after my 9 to 5 at some hourly job. So it means that our take home and our income is lower than maybe some of my peers. But what I'm able to do with those limited funds is pretty great.
Yeah. I just finished reading a book called Profit First that talks about running a business in a way that you're like taking your profit and your owner's compensation out first, and then whatever is, oh, and your taxes. And then whatever's left is what you're operating your business on. And if that's not enough to operate your business, then it's like, okay, you need to look at how your business is structured to actually make sure it's going to work for you. And I think he talks a little bit about applying that to your personal life as well. And I think it's a really valuable way of looking at things. And he talks about, some businesses, it says, they're doing $1 million in revenue, but then their expenses are $999,000 or whatever. And so they are living paycheck to paycheck in a way. Whereas a business that, does 500,000 in revenue and only has whatever $250,000 in expenses is going to be doing a lot more. They're going to be more sustainable. They're going to be more comfortable with their, like, if they do have a fluctuation. And I think looking at that personally makes a lot of sense as well. Like,
yeah, I think you're right.
The status of having a job where you are making more money. But then if you like live in such a way that you're spending every single paycheck immediately, that's not a very stress-free, calming headspace to be in.
Right.
She says, with personal experience and knowledge of that situation. So I think that's one of our goals personally and with the business is to figure out like what can we cut back on so that we can make choices. You can like go on trips and like you can choose which things are more valuable to you. And maybe for some people being able to buy a cup of coffee, a nice cup of coffee every day is a value that is, it's what they want to do instead of going on trips. Yeah. And that's good for them.
I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes feel like talking about that makes me seem like I have an air of moral superiority. And I think I want to empower everyone to spend their money that they have the means to spend, which is going to be, that's a lot different. However they choose. And for some people that really is their daily latte or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It is trying that great new restaurant in town that is doing those things, but those things just don't bring me the same a level of joy. But there's plenty of space at those coffee shops for those people that choose to spend their money that way. And that's really exciting.
Yeah. I find that I really like having good coffee beans and like making my own coffee at home.
Yeah.
Because it tastes better. I become that kind of bougie where my homebrewed coffee beans are oftentimes more, I mean, it's cheaper, but also I just like the taste more. Just does it for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I recently got James on coffee. Have I told you this?
I think, in Norway.
It was, so we had a very quick layover. Speaking of budget travel, we found a flight. We had to go to a wedding in India a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Found an obscenely cheap ticket, but of course it was like a 36-hour leg of travel, which involved a completely unnecessary layover in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia because it was an Ethiopian Airlines thing. Anyway, we crashed at a hotel for a few hours, which was nice, but he had a cup of coffee and he was like, I didn't hate that because he thinks coffee is just nasty water. And I think it is, but it's nasty water I crave. Like, I like my brand of nasty water. Like, I buy my own beans. I, have a little burr grinder here, and I don't make fancy coffee. I still put cream in it. Mm-hmm. But I like what I make because it's not crappy and it's not fantastic. But then we did go to Oslo. We had a layover, stopover in Oslo for a few days on our way back from Switzerland. And we went to a place called Tim Wendelboe. And this man, Tim, is a world famous barista. Ooh. And can use the AeroPress like a wizard and chooses his varietals of beans all over the globe to curate his his blends, and it's a whole fancy ordeal. So we did a coffee tasting, which if you have the opportunity to do a coffee tasting anywhere, I think it's a good bit of fun. But we tried 4 different types of coffee, and my husband left a convert. Like, he liked coffee, and now we've got pour over, we have AeroPress, we have like a little ceramic cone thing, we have a Vietnamese coffee thing. That's more for me.
Sure.
But now his coffee standards have gone from like, oh, nasty mud water to beyond surpassing my standards. And we will just keep passing like ships in the night on our tastes in these things.
Yeah. Well,
he's out fancied me.
It's like if you have a bad, I mean, if your only experience of coffee is like Folgers instant coffee, then you're gonna think, oh, this, like, I would rather just not have coffee than. And if Folgers instant coffee is your yum, I'm sorry to yuck it, but that's just how I feel. I
don't feel that way at all. Folgers, please sponsor me. Get at me, Folgers.
Folgers, I will take your money. I will change my life for you. But even, I mean, there's just something different about drinking coffee that's like the beans were just ground a few seconds ago. And they were grown in a place that was not exploiting its workers. So we were talking about like choosing your adventure. I think you've been intentional about choosing what's important to you. I've noticed one of the things that you've chosen, one of your side quests has been now to make content about the travel that you're doing, and like that is a large side quest. And you have been really putting in the work. As somebody who has to shoot and edit videos for a living, I think like I admire how much time and effort you put into this, because it's literally like another job and it takes so much time and creative energy to do it. So A, why? And B, how are you liking it these days?
First of all, thank you for seeing that. Because some days, you're talking about putting in the work and how hard it is. Some days it's downright sucks because I keep choosing. I wake up every day and I choose this violence for myself where I could be luxuriating in nothing, or doing other types of work, I guess. And I keep choosing to edit and do other things. Can you repeat those questions for me? Because I got lost in gratitude.
A was how did you get into it? And then how and why? And then B is, now that you're further down the road, how are you feeling about it? Are you going to keep doing it, etc.?
Okay. How and why? So in 2021, my husband James and I eloped in Iceland, and we had the hardest time doing the research, figuring out how to have a legal Icelandic marriage, choosing the location, choosing an officiant, a celebrant, all that stuff. It was so hard, and there were so few resources. So we did the thing. It was a fabulous time. 10/10 would recommend. Iceland's just stunning. We didn't end up filming much of that from that perspective. We took regular tourist videos and shots, and we took a camper van around the ring road, and we had a fabulous time doing that. We hiked to see the volcano that was popping off in 2021. And it was all just breathtaking, life-changing stuff. And then a couple years later, we found ourselves wanting to answer the questions that we were asking ourselves. Because after we got back, we realized that those questions still weren't being answered by anyone in particular. Yes, there's vlogs and there's a few things here and there, but no one was able to really track ahead of time the things that we wanted to do specifically. So that's that's where we got started. That's what we set out to do, was we salvaged all of the regular tourist content that we filmed and mashed it into like how to elope in Iceland video. Watch it if you dare. You know, the first few YouTube videos you make are not sexy. And it was very much us just sort of standing in this room with unsophisticated equipment. And, you know, I definitely had to drink a little bit to be comfortable enough to be on camera. Because I was just like, hello, hi, we're going to... It was just such... Great. Like, I don't know who I'm looking at. And we very kindly, we relied on you to help us salvage a lighting situation, because it was bonkers. It was terrible. But we loved it. We were bit by it. And we thought, you know, we're traveling again. That's a no-brainer, right? Like we were probably planning another trip when we were thinking about that. Mm-hmm. Why don't we actually be a little more intentional this time about filming it and tracking the questions that we're asking and finding ways to answer our own questions and share those questions and answers in ways that can help people. So no, we're not the first people to make a video about X, Y, and Z, but we're the first people to do it the way we did. And even if we're not, I think there's value in adding to this conversation. So we recently released how to travel in Switzerland video. I've got in a couple weeks solo travel in Korea series coming out, and more I'm able to be intentional about the equipment I'm choosing to use, about the shots that I'm making, and it is truly laborious, but I found myself invigorated by the conversations that I get to have after that. Really fostering a sense of community with like budget-minded travelers who are into authentic content. I think authenticity as a content creator, that's a vital ingredient that I like to bring to the conversation. That is not what everybody chooses to do. It's just like the difference between choosing to travel versus choosing your daily latte. That's just like the ingredient I want to bring to it, is that air of authenticity. So finding more authentic travelers and budget-minded travelers that want to have that conversation, and then finding the ability to answer their questions has just been super exciting for me. I really like it. It's something that I look forward to doing every weekend when I have the time. What I'm more recently learning how to do, just like I'm unlearning how to do the most in my 9 to 5, I am trying to unlearn how to do the most in my 5 to 9. So I don't burn myself out, because I definitely did go a bad way burning myself out on this content journey pretty early on. Unfortunately, it's such a, well, slippery slope may not be the right way to put it, but it's like a roller coaster where you like tick up and you're like, this is a lot of work. Oh my God. And then you come over the edge and you're like, oh, I see the value. But over there, website, TikTok, short form content, long form content, branded partnerships, sponsorships, travel trips. Hey gang, can't this just be easy? Like, I'm trying to have fun. So it's a matter of my own self-control, because it's always just like a yes and like, oh, let's just become affiliates for this travel insurance that we're already using. That shouldn't be too hard. And let's just get our domain and start making a website. Let's just, we're already here. We can write a quick blog while we're doing the vlog, and that's no trouble. But it's never just, right? Like, that's hours and hours of work, even if you are transforming long form into blog style content. I have to slow down. Yeah. Essentially, that's my great task right now, is unlearning how to do the most in my spare time.
Right. Because you have a lot of things to do in your spare. You also have a house that you're trying to,
oh my gosh, yes,
renovate. Like, yeah.
Do
you see? And I don't spend a lot of time in the travel content space, but I have seen like all of the people I end up following do it full time. Are there a lot of people who don't, who are like working a 9 to 5 and then traveling for fun and just slowly filtering out content as they make it?
I don't know. I haven't found too many of those people. What I end up seeing is people who drain their bank accounts and sell all their stuff to hit the road and maybe travel for a year, and then they start filming content, but then they start picking up subscribers on YouTube, and then they decide, let's just keep going. Or they found that it's too tricky to have a traditional 9 to 5, so I'm going to work remotely while I'm traveling to try to sustain that lifestyle. I haven't seen too many people who are traveling on the side while they support the other demands of life. If you're out there, please find me at Away with the Maze. I want to get this conversation started. I need more of you who are living a similar life.
Yes. Yeah, it's accessible travel.
Yeah.
Not just for the rich and famous.
That's right. I think there's something cool and wonderful about the idea of hitting the road full time, but that's just not sustainable for everyone, accessible for everybody. Mm-hmm. You know, some people, we have rent to pay, we have mortgages, we have pets, we have families. Like, we have roots in emotional, sociological, financial senses.
Yeah.
And for some, it's easy to give those things up or sell all those things and do whatever, but not all of us are willing to give that up for something that may not last forever.
Yeah.
Not to be a pessimist about it, but I think I would love to travel more. Definitely, right? Like, I right now, strictly within the bounds of allowance that the 9 to 5 gives me. So we have holiday over here and a couple weeks of PTO over there.
You figured out some ways to do it with your work too, which is,
oh my gosh,
we can get into that too. But
yes, I'd love to.
Down a note.
But that's also an approach that I don't want to stray too far away from as a creator traveling in the 9 to 5, because so many people that I'm trying to reach are also in the 9 to 5 space. So why would I run too far away from that?
You know, do you see it? Does it feel like a mission or like a big thing, or just like this is nice to do while we're currently in it, and then if it changes into something else, that's okay too?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think if it morphs and grows into something else, I think we still have some space to play in.
Sure.
I am really enjoying the journey so far. However restrictive and frustrating it may be, I am enjoying the space that I'm in and the people I'm able to reach with this particular perspective. But I look forward to hopefully adding to that perspective one day and putting some more things on my plate, different types of journeys.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a good space to be in when you're not relying on it for income, because you can kind of chase your bliss and go wherever it takes you, and it feels good no matter what. Like, you're not dependent on like, oh, I have to get this many subscribers. You can just kind of put out what you like, and then people who join, you know that they are following you because it's something authentic that you're putting out, and you're not trying to pander or cater to who you think you need to bring on board. You're just doing what you want to do. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, we really like it.
Yeah. I was going to say if somebody wanted to go on a trip, like they're thinking, I am ready to take a trip overseas, and I want to do this budget travel thing. From a practicality standpoint, where do you suggest they start thinking about things? So like, when you talk about the credit card points, what are some things that they can start to think about? And then from the actual trip perspective, when you decide you want to go somewhere, what's the first thing you do for planning a trip?
Okay.
I can try to remember those questions in case we get lost.
Yeah, we get far away sometimes. Let's see. I think, asterisk. I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. This is what we do. But we funnel as many expenses as reasonably possible through our credit cards. For example, I think everyone's insurance rates are going up. At least it feels like everyone's insurance rates are going up. So we just paid our homeowners and our car insurance. And between them, a couple thousand at least for this go round, for this renewal cycle. I recently got the Capital One Venture Card, which had a $4,000 minimum spend. And so I was halfway to that spend right away. Throw in a couple more electric bills, grocery trips, and other routine expenses, just regular standard expenses. I'm not going out of my way to buy a new computer for myself because I need to hit my minimum spend on my credit card.
Yeah.
Though there's nothing wrong with that if you have the means to do so. So really, if what we do as like funneling those everyday expenses to our cards, still living very much within our means and making the most out of our necessary expenses, that has made all the difference to us. When it comes time to redeem those points, whether it be through Chase, Capital One, American Express, or multiple sources, knowing how to consult their like valuation and when to find the best deals. I mean, there's a lot of really cool resources out there. Let's see, I personally like the Daily Drop. I like Travel on Points. What's his name? Travel guy.
NerdWallet.
Oh, NerdWallet's also really good. I like NerdWallet. The Points guy, Brian Kelly. Like, all really good resources because the people that work there, and these various resources go through to do all the work of valuation, and that is what it comes down to. Because like, I'm not about to make a spreadsheet on the Hawaiian Alaska merger and its value through Amex points and how I'm gonna get 7,000 points each way on my upcoming trip to Dallas for my tickets. What like, I'm not gonna go value that myself. Like, that's a lot of extra work, and these places do that for you, making this more accessible. And so they're creating accessibility down the line that I then get to benefit from, which is why I'm trying to pass that on and create other accessible opportunities. When it comes to starting to do research on any place, in the last few years, it's been YouTube, 100%. Things to do in this city, places to eat in this city. That's how we've ended up finding creators that we've come back to again and again, as those full-time travelers that spent some time in Seoul or spent some time in New Delhi. And we've really come to enjoy the perspective and the activities that they seek out and think like, oh yeah, we should add that one to the list. So again and again, we seek out long form content to answer the questions that we're asking about just getting the baseline of what we should be doing in this city or with this trip. Like, oh, how many days should you spend in Hiroshima? I disagree because I'm personally biased, but most people say no more than 3 days. 2 tops. I'm like, boo. I look forward to making a video that challenges that perspective. But there's a lot of value in, again and again, people saying like, you really only need to spend a few days here if you're seeking this. Yep. Are those the right answers? No, they're just valuable perspectives. And so as we go through and we travel to those places and we are just going to continue to share our own perspectives of that. Like, oh, I think more than 3 days in Hiroshima. I think you should definitely try to go to this place that no one ever goes to because it's like one of the coolest places ever. And really add to an already engaging conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. You are choosing to live your life so intentionally when it comes to like deciding what your priorities are going to be and what you're going to do to make sure you can live that life that you want to live. When you're traveling, does that also apply? Like, are you choosing places to go? Are you balling on a budget when you're traveling? How do you pick those places? Like, what are your travel priorities to make sure you are getting the best experience you possibly can, especially if it's a place you haven't been to before?
I like to balance the budget travel when I'm actually reaching my destination in the place I've been planning to visit. I will balance budget with ballin'. So as I am careful to earn the points very mindfully to get us the ability to access these trips, I'm also very careful about saving the money I have with a high enough interest rate to give me essentially the fun money I want to be in a particular place. Or the bank account that I need that gives me like no foreign transaction fees, so that when I do spend my money and I do choose like, oh, I'm going to have an amazing omakase experience at this sushi place, like I don't have to worry about it being on the budget, because it's definitely not on the budget. But I've budgeted for things to not be on the budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. For you personally, like what are your priorities for, like, what if you're going to choose to be a baller, like what are you going to ball out on?
Food. Probably food, yeah.
Yeah. That tracks. Same.
Yeah.
How do you like traveling solo versus with another person?
So when I'm solo, it's nice to have the autonomy to just sort of drift where I'd like, but I do find that I'm not always confident enough to put myself into situations where I would otherwise have another person. Like, oh, let's go try this bar, or let's go to this restaurant. So sometimes when I'm solo traveling, I'll find myself finding excuses to kind of stick around in my hotel room a little longer because it's cozy. Like, oh, I'm just getting sorted. I'm going through my luggage. I'm packing up for my next move to a new city. Like, really? Because if you were if you were traveling with somebody, I have a feeling that would be the quick part of the day, and then you wouldn't wait to like hit the ground running off to your next activity. So for me, I love solo travel because I think I do continue to learn things about myself every time I go. But there's, I think, a little bit of apprehension and fear of like, just get out, just do the thing. Stop being so comfy, cozy in your hotel or your hostel or whatever it is. And like, just go see something. You're already here. But I also get amazing sleep. Like the autonomy to eat and do and experience exactly what you want without like going days without having to speak to anybody if you don't want to, life-changing.
Interesting.
Yeah, it just like rests that part of my brain that has to constantly interact with people, because that's just what I do all day at my job, is like constantly talking, and to be able to go a couple days with like just like, eating my noodles or like going around the city where no one understands me and all I have to do is like say thank you to the 7-Eleven guy, like that's something really restorative that I just love to experience. But traveling with people, I constantly get to lean into that sense of adventure. Oh, you want to walk down here with me? Like, I don't know, this could be cool, this could not be cool, let's go check it out. I saw this thing down there. Like, just wandering more. I think I wander more with people than on my own. I'm a lot more deliberate when I'm by myself.
Interesting.
You took a...
I was going to ask a divisive question about, is it more fun to travel with your husband or with your friends? But we can save that one for off the pod.
Yeah.
I would say I don't have enough data.
Gotta collect some more data.
Yeah. My friend and I, with whom I love traveling, haven't gotten enough. We just haven't gotten enough of those travel experiences in.
We need more girls' trips.
We do need more girls'
lady
trips.
Ladies.
More 2-day baths.
Yeah. So for work now, you've managed to wrangle some work trips, and I want you to just talk a little bit about that, and like, was it intentional to get to this point? Did you have kind of a little roadmap of like, I want to travel more, and here are some ways I could do it, and what does it look like now?
So when I was living in Japan, I think I was outright spoiled by the ability to earn money living abroad and to just experience other parts in the world, which to me seems like a vacation, however challenging, because I get so much from it. Like, how can I be winning so much and getting like the upper hand in this and like really coming out with a pretty sweet deal, even if it is work? when I moved back to the States, I worked for a year at a nonprofit and then ended up not being a great fit for me, but found a job at my local university in international education. And that way I was able to kind of keep my foot in the door with just global citizens. Having students running around in the hallways, speaking different languages was just like, so cool for me. Very satisfying. Even if the work itself is very hard. The industry of international education is a really tough and unknown place to be. Terribly underfunded, terribly understaffed, but the people that stick around as long as they do it because they love it. So I ended up getting tagged by someone in our office who was asked to travel and not able to travel themselves at the time. They had too much going on, to go to Vietnam for 2 weeks to do recruitment for our program. It was terrifying because no matter how much prep you do for the thing, it doesn't prepare you for the thing. Being able to talk to parents about programs and do all these things. So my days were very long and very stressful. And yet I felt like I was the one like with the huge privilege because I was in Vietnam. So I spent a few days in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh and just like really got to have a good time. Like something about going to a local brewery or like talking to the people in your industry and just like having these real life conversations was so invigorating to me. A side tangent being that something that's continued to inspire me to want to talk to people and get to know people and tell their stories. I went to a really cool brewery called Heart of Darkness and got to know one of the like founders and really just had these raw and fantastic conversations about the beer industry, yes, but about like the people working there and where he sees the craft beer industry going in Southeast Asia. And I asked him, like, would you ever see Heart of Darkness going to the United States? He was like, no. And that was awesome because it really humbled me, because he was like, why does the beer industry need to aspire to go to the US? Like if they do, and they did, a little bit in New York here and there, but why not go to the Chinese market right there? It was also just as thirsty. Anyway, it was fantastic. And it really like helped me realize like there's so many cool conversations to have with travelers and artists and consumers, and that planted a very early seed for me doing what I want to be doing. So after I got back from Vietnam, I didn't travel for that job really anymore. I waited around for the opportunity, but never really came along for a while, and then eventually moved into a different position and planted the seeds in my sort of, I'd call it a raise, but in my promotion, as I've been there for a while, to be someone who gets into the business of study abroad. So it gets into the export of students, if you had to really put it a certain way. So for years, I had wanted to bring students to Hiroshima, where we lived, to give them a safe and sort of guided experience that catered to where they're at in their lives developmentally, and give them opportunities to explore a culture that is so different and have conversations with people with such vast differences, but also have a structured place to navigate culture shock and really get through the throes of travel. So a couple of years ago, I was able to do just that. My department was kind enough to humor me in proposing this. I recruited the students. I planned with the providers and myself, 2 faculty members, and a couple of, it's about 17 students, went to a few of the major cities in Japan, and just experienced difference for a few days. Was it great? Yeah. Was it terrible? Of course. Right. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work in the months and months leading up to it.
Yeah.
Constantly working through recruiting and planning and budgeting and on top of your regular job. But when you are on the ground in these places, it is 24/7. You are trying to like these students, their parents trusted you to keep them alive and safe and and help them thrive in this country. That's why they gave you the money to do these things. And so there were many days where I didn't get any sleep at all because there's just so many details to run, and so many things to keep in mind. And in fact, when we got back from a fantastic and wonderful trip, I thought, never again. I can't do this. But it wasn't, well, it was just a lot. I think I got back and I had to go back to work the next day because that's just the industry of education.
Right.
It doesn't always offer the flexibility you want to recover. So we got back. I vowed, like, oh, no, don't want to do this again. But it must have been 6 or 8 weeks before I was like, well, the contract is good for 3 years. Should we just try it again? That trip ended up falling through. There were a lot of logistical reasons for that one. But this year I've gotten myself in deep. I am recruiting to take another group of students to Japan next summer. And we are going to be running our first trip to Eastern Europe in cooperation with one of our faculty members. They have trusted me to help run all the details for this trip. And so they're going to be managing the education part of it. They've got the syllabus under wraps. They're doing all that stuff and recruiting on their end. But I am running the budget, working with the providers, helping us get our bookings underway. So if the stars align this summer, you'll see me in Eastern Europe for 2 weeks and then Japan right after that for another 2 weeks, which isn't so bad as a humble state employee.
No, definitely not. And you're getting to, I mean, besides the fact that you are actively traveling on on your job's budget, and like you don't have to take PTO for it, you are also actively getting to facilitate these experiences for young impressionable students who are the future and who need to feel uncomfortable, but they're feeling uncomfortable with a safe person, and hopefully going to continue that travel journey in the future.
Yeah, all part of the plan. Yes. For most of the students that our last go round, it was their first time on a plane, let alone out of the country. A lot of new passports in that group, and they all showed up at 4:30 in the morning to get on this plane with me, and they were nervous. There were some existential crises in the room. There was a lot of frustration around linguistic difference, around behavioral difference. This old lady shushed me on this train, and I'm downright offended by it. So there was so much dialogue. Like, this trip, like every night we had check-in, and it was just like, are you good? Like, tell me if you're upset. Tell me what this means, because a lot of people don't understand. With every high you get from like the cool parts of travel, you get those lows too. As you are navigating culture shock, especially for the first time, it hits different. You are like, oh, I'm in Japan. Everything is cool, anime and robots and all this cool stuff. But then on the other side of it, there are vast cultural differences, and I'm not only like frustrated by it and the barriers that they create between myself and my ability to enmesh in my environment, but I'm downright kind of angry about it. Like, this sucks. I kind of want to go home. So really, like, having raw conversation with students as they are able to reach homeostasis and like, hey, you're feeling a really real thing, this difference that you have, but that is actually a testament to your willingness to put yourself in a difficult environment. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how cool that is, that you just put yourself into this situation because you wanted to experience something difficult, something different. And then the next day, it's like, new day, fresh air. Okay, how will we experience difference today? What kind of dialogue are we going to have about it? So I think it's just so cool to be able to facilitate conversations like that.
And think how perfectly poised you were to do all of this with your social work degree. Like, you didn't end up becoming a therapist although that was something that you had thought about, but then you're using those exact skills in a different capacity. And it just, the way it all just like aligned, it's beautiful.
Yes.
Chef's,
Thank you.
chef's kisses
Whew.
all around the universe.
I'm living the life of my dreams,
Yes.
actually. So it's
I
actually
love
going pretty
it.
well.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
Makes me so
This is a
happy.
testament. Like, y'all go get MSWs. They're very cool degrees. Even if you are not, like, there's no such thing as a stereotypical social worker, it turns out, because we're just so capable of weaving our profession into every single thing that we do,
Yeah.
even if it is travel. You wouldn't
Yes.
think that travel, accessible travel and affordable travel and social work are in any way related, but I'm here to tell you they are.
It's just, it's like, I mean, I guess also we went to a liberal arts college where it's like, I think the emphasis is more on learning skills as opposed to forcing yourself into a career path that you have to stay on for the rest of your life. And I think that's a mindset that I really appreciated. I was a music major. Music was my third major at school. I kept changing. I am sure, I mean, I'm not using much of what I studied for my music major these days, but I learned other skills at school that I think were invaluable. And I think this mindset of expansion where it's saying, you know, what are the skills that I have? What skills am I interested in? Whether or not they fit into a certain perceived career path, like figuring out what you enjoy studying and what you're good at can lead somewhere that's completely unexpected but so beautiful in the end if you allow it to.
100%. Yeah, those transferable skills, they really will take you places if you are intent on learning those skills when the opportunity arises and intent on leaning into the opportunities.
Yeah. And not to say that, you know, it's always going to be an easy path. Like it's taken you years to get here. We talked about wanting to see this kind of lifestyle for years. But you were so persistent with it and you were very strategic with it. And I don't know that many people have that same stick-to-itness that you do. And so, you know, I think people get discouraged really easily. They're like, you know, it's been 2 years since I started trying to, and I'm talking to myself here too. It's been like such a short amount of time or such a long time since I started this thing, when really, like, relatively speaking, it hasn't been that much time. So you have to like really be willing to continue to pursue those goals and know that it might not happen overnight, and that's okay. It just means that the life you're building is going to be more sustainable because you've built it piece by piece. You know what works for you, and it's gonna work out eventually, but eventually sometimes feels like a really long time.
Yeah, eventually it can feel like a whole lifetime away. Like, I don't have that kind of time. Times
No.
I'm wasting my life waiting for this thing to happen. Like, well,
Yeah,
rest is good too, actually.
that's good. Yeah.
You know,
We
the
see
space
people
between is
blow
just
up
as
on
valuable.
Yes, we see people blow up on Instagram, and we're like, oh, why can't I just blow up on Instagram and then change my whole life and be able to do what I love? But that's not how it works for most
That's
people.
not how it works. Yeah. Yeah.
And
not
also,
for most
that's
people.
like a Icarus flying too close to the sun kind of situation. You can burn yourself out real fast if you gain success too quickly without the life lessons that you need to like teach you how to do it in a way that's going to work for you and for your mental health.
Yeah.
So good job doing all that.
Thank you.
What kinds of transformations did you see in the students after that first trip to Japan?
I had at least one person decide they wanted to live there.
Wow.
Which, I had to be really careful in the conversations before, during, and after the trip. Like, yes, preparing for a trip like this, you end up romanticizing it a little bit. But then you have to be super realistic. Like, what you're seeing right now as a temporary visitor who does not have the obligations of greater society is not what you will experience if you live here. Also, it is capable of being crushingly isolating. Like, ask me how I know how lonely it can be living abroad with no one.
Yeah.
But they seemed really into it. So I was like, all right, maybe we can talk about the solitude some other time. But they were willing to take it on. I did have a lot of people look back and recognize the growth that came with the challenge of difference. And I thought that was so cool. I had students do video reflections after we got back and submit them to me as part of a grant that I had applied for.
Very cool.
And there were so many people who, I don't know, it seems kind of like a horn tooting exercise, but I had a lot of people thank me.
To your
For-
horn.
Dude, like, I was thanking them for putting the trust in me that it takes to give me a bit of your money and we fly across the world for a couple of weeks. Like, that's a huge exercise in trust. And so I was really grateful for them, but they were giving in turn their gratitude to me for pulling them into such a different place. I had a lot of people who had said, like, Japan was really never on my list. Like, I didn't think, it seemed like a cool place, but I would have rather, I saw myself going to Italy first. I saw myself going here first, and I didn't. Like, I went here with you. And it was just so different and amazing. And I didn't think I would have ever enjoyed such a different place. Like, yes. And that was such a cool thing for me. Like, people were so willing to step outside of their comfort zone. And just embrace that difference. Yes.
Yeah.
And enjoy those little things and enjoy, like, I loved that it was like, I thought it was like Christmas every day. Like, I woke up and was really frustrated sometimes. Oh my gosh, the cat herding it takes to keep everything together.
I mean,
It's
they are,
just, on
they're
another
children.
level.
So.
Oh my Lord. But the joy, like, where are we going today? What are we doing? That was always so awesome. So they brought that joy home and, like, brought home that familiarity and brought home a willingness to continue to try new things, even if it's, trying new Japanese foods or familiar Japanese foods that were once very new to them, or convince their friends to do it. Or now, like, I had someone come back and try to apply for the State Department's Critical Languages Scholarship. Like, I think I might try to go study Portuguese because I want to do international social work now. And I was like, yeah. Okay, let's go. Okay.
Travel is transformative, and you have to facilitate that for other people.
Yes.
I love that.
Helping people, both the students and the staff that accompany us on that trip, engage with and become global citizens.
Yes.
Huge goal of mine, and it just exceeds my expectations to have it met so well.
Yeah, I just love that. I love it all around.
Thank you.
I think I need to start landing this plane. So are there...
What a metaphor.
I didn't even think about the metaphor in the context of this conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Any unclosed loops?
I don't want to lose sight of what's next. And while I'm not entirely positive what is next, I'd like to start weaving together some of these things that I've been laying down over the last few years into a more sort of clarified singular goal. I would really like to coordinate trips for adults. If I could do like a Trova trip or something. Do you want to go on a trip with me? Like,
oh my gosh,
would you like to co-lead a trip with me?
I would
for
love
some people
that.
someday.
That would be amazing. Yes,
Yeah.
we
I would
be
love that.
unstoppable. Unstoppable. Oh,
That's too powerful.
I
We
can't
can't
think
do
about
this.
it right now.
Yeah, I would love nothing more than to coordinate trips like this with my best friend and just have just an absolute blast, but also create the content maybe about that, maybe about other
Yeah.
things, but really branch out on the type of content I'm creating, for whom I am creating it, not just myself, of course, but like the types of audiences that I'm keeping in mind with different types of videos, the caliber of trip that I'm able to accomplish, not necessarily in the largeness that I live on the trip.
Yep.
Still always want to be in tune with my budget, but like, is the equipment that I'm using more enhanced? Am I doing this as a travel partnership with some sort of tourism bureau? Am I doing this really cool thing with my best friend? And we're creating content together, or we're sort of co-branding. Like, that's
Impact trips.
impact. Yes. That's really where I want to start seeing things focus, is picking up all these fragments of this career that I've sort of laid this foundation of, and move more thoroughly with that foundation into some really cool, robust adventure.
Okay. We got something to manifest. We can start planning it on our next together weekend, and let's set some goals. Ooh,
Let's set some goals.
Brainstorm. I've got a whiteboard. I'm ready.
Ooh.
That did remind me of one other thing I wanted to mention. All the way back to your Vietnam trip, you were talking about the brewery owner, like, being okay with not coming to America, and in fact not necessarily wanting to export, because I'm sure that's a huge pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so I just love this idea, and this is something that I am always thinking about because of social media and how I earn my way in the world, is like this idea that being smaller, staying smaller, doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I think small can mean different things. Like, we don't have to go out and become just like multi-million-dollar travel creators in order to enjoy creating content while we're traveling. Or it's like, for me, when I'm traveling, if I'm filming or taking pictures, it helps me to like really be in the moment. And am I going to end up using all of the pictures or videos that I took during a trip? Probably not. But did I enjoy taking them in the moment and think, oh, there's this little thing that I noticed, like the way the light hit that particular thing? Like, that for me is so exciting. And I don't have to like make it a huge big thing for it to be just a thing. Like, things can just be themselves without being bigger versions to be valid. And so I like that about what you're doing. Like, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a huge giant thing. It's more like, how can I do what I love to do with where I am currently, and then how can I bring that experience to other people? And I mean, you talked about 17 students. That's a lot of kids whose lives got changed. And it doesn't have to be like, oh, what's a lot of subscribers? I don't have to be reaching a ton of subscribers every day or on YouTube or whatever for my work to have impact. You can impact a student on a smaller trip like that, or in a conversation that you have with them across your desk, about their future career and how they can use social work in a way that might be a little bit different from what they expected. And I think all of that is very cool.
Thank you. Me too. I think it's really great. I love being able to have impactful conversations with people every day. I want that to be, I mean, I was going to say I want that to be my job. It is my job. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do have impactful conversations with people every day. Yeah. I would like to see that more mindfully cultivated and expanded into a different type of career. But I didn't expect myself to be someone who makes conversation with people every day as a job. As someone who is intensely introverted, has a pretty small social battery, but it sort of lives outside of that. I want to be engaging with more brewery owners. I want to talk to these small businesses and these artisans and these like craft pasta makers in Italy and clothing people in Japan. Like, I would love to share their stories and get people off the beaten path, and trying these new and amazing things. Like, that's where I really kind of see things going. If I really had my druthers and I didn't have to worry about money, because that's for now you'll see me in that 9 to 5
Sure.
until the rest of it manifests.
Yeah, but it means that
But
when you're
it's
traveling,
working.
you're not like, not that there's anything wrong with using a travel agency, because they have their place. And I think for a lot of people that does help them to actually have the confidence to travel. But being able to say, you know, we're going to try this place that isn't well publicized, or do this thing so that you can then share it with other people, I think is really wonderful. And off the beaten path, a little more budget friendly. Where was I going to go with that sentence? I had a goal in mind and then I lost it halfway through. But
No.
yeah, being able to seek out and then facilitate and enable other people to have those kinds of experiences that are a little bit more off the beaten path. It's like not just, you know, we're going to visit this same place that all the tourists visit. I think that's really valuable. It's impactful.
It is impactful. And I'm trying to document my impact.
You're documenting your impact. You're doing a great job with it. Well, thank you for your time today. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. This was a lot of fun.
I love you. I love our conversations.
I love you.
To everyone listening, thank you for, I was about to say thank you for coming away with the maze. Thank you for helping us. Thank you for helping us document our impact by listening to this conversation. I need to come up with a tagline for this. I haven't yet, but if anybody out there thinks of a good one, I am taking suggestions. But there's plenty of options there. I'll just fade it out.